Alright guys, what's going on? We are back. Welcome back to the channel if you've been here for a while. If you're just tuning in now, this here is our budget build 72 Nova. So let's just rewind real quick, catch you up to speed. So we bought this car almost a year ago to the day. Now if you've been following along with the channel and you've been here for a while, you remember that this thing came home as just a shell. I mean, it was just the body and not even the whole body. The car had no floors in it, almost no floors in it. This thing was basically just a shell with a title, but it came with a whole bunch of parts. Quarter panels, taillight panel, outer wheel houses. It came with a whole bunch of sheet metal. If you've been following along and you've been here the whole time, you watched us build this car from virtually nothing up into running, driving car. I mean, this thing is a nice, reliable unit. I've been tooling around in it for a couple weeks now, and I love it. It's a riot to drive. It's obnoxious, it's loud, it dishes out all the FUs it possibly can. It's not fast, it's just a cool, fun car that we built for cheap. We've been calling it the budget car, and I've been telling you that I built it for cheap this whole time, but really we've never talked money. We've covered brief segments and what they cost, but overall we've never covered what we have into it now. And for what it's worth, I kind of want to close out the budget build part of this because we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. We made a running, driving 72 Nova, and anything I do to it kind of from this point on, I want to stop calling it a budget. We might do things cheap, but honestly we've reached the goal of creating the running, driving cars. We bought the car a year ago, but really we started working on this thing about 6 months ago. So in 6 months we went from a rusted out shell to a running, driving car, which I think is pretty impressive. Being that we only worked on this thing part-time on weekends here and there, I feel like that's pretty successful. I've broken up my math for how much this cost into 3 different ways. I broke it up into just what we used on the car. So the purchase price of the car, I subtracted all the stuff that the car came with that we didn't use. The second set of numbers that I have for you is the purchase price of the car with all the sheet metal, regardless of what we used or didn't use, with all the parts and pieces and whatever that we had to do to make it a running, driving car. And then the last set of numbers is what I think, roughly it would have cost you at home to build this. I owned a lot of pieces that went onto this car, and they cost me nothing. A family friend of ours years ago gave me a 71 Nova that's been growing in his backyard for years. So we utilized that for a lot of parts on this car that cost me nothing. And then on top of that, a lot of stuff came off of the 69 that we rebuilt and repurposed onto this that also cost me virtually nothing. What I tried to do was the parts that I didn't pay for, I feel like they skew the numbers for if you guys were going to try and build it at home. Because obviously, parts that I had laying around, you might not. So what I tried to do was I went through Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and eBay and whatever to try and find comparable parts and find out what the market value is on them right now. Now keep in mind that those numbers I ran by piecing together individual parts off of Craigslist or Marketplace. So if you bought just the fenders, you might be able to do it cheaper if you find a parts car, and obviously market values change depending on where you're at and stuff like that. So let's go through the numbers and talk some money. When I bought the shell with the sheet metal, I paid $1,500, which some of you at home might be thinking, wow, that's a lot.
You sound insane. Do you realize that? You should be medicated.
You older guys are sitting there and going, holy crap, but it's not 1980 anymore.
Yeah, I'm a grumpy old man. And I don't like things now compared to the way they used to be.
You can't buy, parts cars anymore are like $2,500. So the days of the $500 car, they're gone. They're so gone. So when I looked for this car, or was considering another project car to do a budget style build on, the main thing for me was making sure that rocker panels were good and the rear frame rails. Everything else is pretty simple to change and replace and fix on. But those main, and the roof. I didn't want to do roof work. Rocker panels, roof, and rear frame rails were a must for me. And those components on this car are in really nice shape. For my first set of numbers here, what I did was I ran my $1,500 purchase price of the car and went through, and all the sheet metal that came with it, I deducted from it. All the sheet metal that came with this car came to a grand total of $1,020. If you subtracted that from the purchase price of my car, that means that for just the shell, I paid $480. Okay? Now, if you add all the things that I had to put into it, the interior, the undercoating, the engine and trans, wiring, fuel system, trans cooler lines, the shift and kickdown linkage, the subframe rebuild, exhaust, and then, miscellaneous nuts, bolts, washers, all that stuff. My end result comes to $3,496. If you run the numbers with, I paid $1,500 for the car, whether I used the metal or not, it doesn't matter, and then add the stuff that I had to pay for to build the car, that grand total comes out to $4,516. So that's what it cost me. That's what I'm into this for right now, including the sheet metal that's all stacked up that we didn't use in my shed. So that's what I have into this right now. This is what it cost me to build the car. It was $4,516. Now, the last set of numbers that I ran, like I was telling you, was if you guys at home were going to build this. Now, this is super hard to calculate because obviously I can't figure out what you're going to locate this stuff for and rebuild it. But like I said, based off of rough numbers for stuff that I found and what market values seem to be on junk parts, if you guys were to build it, I calculated that it would probably cost you somewhere in the ballpark of $7,200. Now, like I said, that's a rough figure, but stuff that I had that you wouldn't included the fenders, the door, headlights and taillights, seats, hood, the trunk, the subframe, and all the components that go on the subframe, control arms, the coil springs, shocks. I had the rear end, the drive shaft, the monoliefs, the glass, the steering box, wheels and tires, the rear bumper. If you're trying to recreate this car, you have nothing. That's what I calculate that it would cost you to recreate this. Now, this is by no means a show car at all. All we did was, for as cheaply as I think I possibly could, I just wanted to make a running, driving V8 Nova, and I feel like we've accomplished that. Based off of Nova values today, I think that that's really cheap. One of the things I really liked about this car is it's an honest car. It is so blatantly honest. The shell of this thing was taken apart years ago and stored in a garage, and even though it was rough, there is no previous body work done to this at all. So there was no surprises, there was no Bondo hiding anywhere. This thing is as honest as you can possibly get, which is so important when you're trying to build a project. The last thing you want to do is start cutting into a panel and find 700 pounds of Bondo and somebody that's been there before. So this car was just a good, honest, beat up Nova. The drivetrain, we saved a ton of money by going small block. In today's day and age, a lot of people are going LS swaps. If you didn't see when we got the drivetrain, that drivetrain came out of a running, driving 68 Camaro. We went and drove the car before we pulled it. It's a 327 small block. It's a 2-barrel. It's got a power glide transmission. We paid $1,000 for the engine, trans, and it came with the radiator, the carb, carb to pan, ready to go. We slid it right in the car and fired it up. And that was, it doesn't get any simpler than that. You might think that $1,000 for a small block is a lot, but this is a nice small block that was clean, it runs great, it's reliable. We were able to go and drive it before it was yanked. To me, that was important, making sure that we were starting with a really good foundation. It's a really nice, reliable car. And at least I know every nut. I've touched every nut and bolt on this car because there were no nuts and bolts on this car. It's just a fun car. I really like it. Drop down in the comments. Let me know what you think of this thing. Let me know what you think about the prices. Is it worth more than what it cost me to build it? Is it worth what it cost me to build it? So the main thing here, for me, it really doesn't matter what we have into this as far as money invested, because we had great times building this with my friends and family. My son's gonna have memories that he'll be able to carry with him forever. Regardless of what it costs, we had a blast putting this thing together. Can't wait to keep wrenching on it. We're gonna keep doing stuff for the channel for this car. You'll see that in future videos. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.